Hey, so you remember back in the day when I didn't like alternative? Remember what I used to say about it? What the definition of alternative was?
Yeah, I remember your definition back then. It's music that most people hate. Hello and welcome once again to the Darkened Room of Music Conversation. I'm Chris.
And I'm Darren.
Today we're going to talk about 80s alternative.
All right.
And its influence throughout the years. It's kind of hard to talk about 80s alternative without rewinding just a little bit into the 70s.
For sure.
And in some cases in the 60s.
Yeah.
Its roots really go back that far.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. You think about the alternative acts that started like in the 70s. You've got your Elvis Costello, you got The Cure, Joy Division, Psychedelic Furs, Talking Heads, B-52s, Blondie, The Pretenders. All of these bands got their start in like the mid to late 70s.
Right.
Some even earlier. I think the B-52s were earlier than that.
Right.
So yeah, you know, when you think of 80s alternatives in these bands, you think of the 80s.
Yes, you do.
But they actually got their start there in the 70s.
Yeah.
And also when you talk about alternative, that's a very large umbrella. There's
Right.
so many different styles of alternative music.
Yeah, you know, for me, one of the things that defines alternative for me is the sound of the voice.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. A band that doesn't get linked into the alternative movement, but I think they're applicable, in my opinion, would be a band like Roxy Music.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
yes.
Brian Ferry's voice, I think, is a very alternative sounding voice.
Yes, that's a great point.
But I don't think that alternative claimed them all that much, even though a lot of people who like alternative liked Roxy Music.
Yes.
But anyway, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
that's fine. Interject anytime.
Okay.
I'm going to just kind of give an overview of the different styles and their influences and how they there's so many ways that the influences interconnect with all of these bands, and it's actually
Right.
kind of complicated. So I'm going to give you just kind of a basic framework as I see it.
Okay.
So this is kind of my opinion. Some of you may disagree. You're welcome to leave comments and let us know
Absolutely.
your thoughts on it. But I think that the alternative movement really started with the punk stuff. That's where people really started noticing, because the Sex Pistols were just so outrageous, so in your face, that, you know, there was such a backlash against that.
Right.
I think that made alternative cool, and the people that liked alternative.
Right.
So that punk movement, and even before then, the Stooges had quite the influence on the Sex Pistols.
And I would say that music, by definition, was kind of alternative in the sense that it wanted to be a complete 180 from your Led Zeppelins, your classic rock type stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't about, you know, playing all technically proficient. It was more about just having an attitude and getting your feeling across.
Yeah, exactly
so
right.
I think you're right. I think that is, by definition, alternative from the mainstream.
Exactly right, yeah. And that first punk with the Sex Pistols and Black Flag, you know, that was all like just be as noisy as possible, scream as much as possible.
The Clash.
The Clash. When the Clash came along, and the Ramones, and you know, those kind of bands, it became a little more melodic. It wasn't quite as screamy, and you could hear that it was kind of not really mainstreaming itself, but it was like molding into something, you know.
Right.
It was evolving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you had and the influences of this. I mean, you can hear it today with, you know, modern bands, especially the bands in the like early 2000s, the Blink 182 and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, another band that fell under the punk moniker was the Misfits, and I really think that they had a big influence on the glam metal that came in the 80s.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, because like Motley Crue, they started out as kind of wanting to emulate the punk sound.
Right.
And they
Yes,
eventually
they did.
evolved into what they did. So,
Right.
So yeah, there's that influence there. So yeah, punk would be one category of alternative. Also, electronic and new wave.
Yeah.
You go back to the 70s for Kraftwerk.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, Kraftwerk is such a monumental, influential band.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard the old stuff by Kraftwerk, like the Robots and that stuff is so good.
Yeah.
Audubon, I mean, it's really, really ahead of its time. You know, you definitely hear the influence, and Devo comes to mind just right out the gate.
Yeah.
And then even in songs like, believe it or not, like Mr. Roboto, I think that had a very Kraftwerk sound.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Even though, you know, Styx is not alternative, but let's not get carried away here. But I'm just saying that Kraftwerk was a huge influence.
Yeah, I think the electronic new wave stuff had the biggest influence from the alternative for the new wave throughout the 80s.
Right.
because you had Pet Shop Boys and Eurythmics and Depeche Mode.
Yep.
All of those came after.
Human League.
Yeah, Joy Division. They're kind of they can be cited as an influence there early on.
And those early Human League records are totally different bag, man. They're Trent Reznor was a humongous fan.
There you go.
Of the Human League and Kraftwerk and all that type stuff.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And Joy Division and all that. So and you could totally hear it. So
yeah, major influences even to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Kraftwerk hadn't recorded the first album with just computers, no one had ever done that before.
Right.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. So that's another moniker, electronic new wave. I'm moving on to the rock scene now.
Yeah.
You can go back to the 60s and think of Velvet Underground.
Mm-hmm.
And if, the Doors came out today, they would probably
His voice was an alternative sounding voice.
They would be considered alternative, yeah.
For sure.
And I've often thought, I like alternative a lot. What would I listen to if I was born in the 60s? Would it be those bands, most likely?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point.
Yeah, another big influence on the rock scene of alternative was Big Star. Are you familiar with Big Star?
I am familiar with them, and I really like them
that
a lot.
Debut album is
incredible.
Fantastic.
Sure is.
Yeah, and they have influenced so many people.
Yes, they have.
Michael Stipe of r.e.m. cites them as a major influence on him.
And they had a little bit of power pop in them too.
They did, yeah.
That was another, and that's another genre. Bands like Cheap Trick kind of crossed over into the Ramones territory occasionally.
Yeah.
But still had the catchy choruses and stuff like that. So
you read my mind. Yeah, I was going to bring up Cheap Trick, who also influenced people today.
Yeah, Sonic Youth,
Dave Grohl. Cites Cheap Trick as a big influence.
Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. He was big Cheap Trick fan.
Yeah. So r.e.m. came along, and then you had the emo crowd. Mm-hmm. You had the Cure and the Smiths.
Yeah.
The sad.
Melancholy
makeup face. The whole melancholy thing.
Yeah,
that was huge back then, and that influenced some of the emo punk that you heard in the early 2000s as well.
Right, and even the material you could hear the influence, and even in bands like Smashing Pumpkins.
Exactly right.
You could definitely hear the Robert Smith, influence and some of that stuff. Just the way it's written.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you had Sonic Youth. I think you mentioned them before.
Yeah.
They were kind of the lo-fi, noisy kind of, but still melodic.
Yeah, I liked them a lot.
Yeah. And then the Replacements, they're just a straightforward rock band with the alternative sounding
Screaming
voice.
Trees, kind of, I think of them in that same.
Yes.
Another one, Social Distortion. Mm-hmm. All of that, I think, is kind of married nicely in that movement right there. The band Sugar. Yeah, all that stuff.
Which Sugar originally started out as Husker Du, the lead singer.
Husker Du, yep.
Yeah, I always say Husker Du, but it's Husker Du.
You're down south, that's fine.
I am, yeah. Give me a break. You go later into the 80s, and a lot of the rock alternatives started to creep into the charts. They became mainstream acts. You had U2, you had the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which they started out real punky and funky.
Yeah.
And they became more mainstream rock eventually throughout their career. And there was a big hit, So Alive by Love and Rockets.
Yeah. That was a top 40 hit. Big hit.
It was indeed, yeah. So, major influences even to this day from the rock scene.
Yeah.
And, all of these together, some of these different categories and genres, you meld them together and you get things like 9 Inch Nails. And then, later in the 80s and even into the 90s, you had the harder rock alternative like The Cult. And like Gene Loves Jezebel.
Yep.
Smashing Pumpkins you mentioned. And then eventually that all leads to Nirvana.
Right. And that's when the real explosion happened. And Soundgarden and groups like that who predated Nirvana.
Yeah, Soundgarden's, they actually had releases in the 80s.
Yeah. And they kind of, towed the line between, metal territory, but still having an alternative appeal.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's kind of an overview for me. And, that's just kind of how I see it. Again, comment if you disagree with me.
No, I think you're spot on.
Yeah. We're going to list out now some of my favorite alternative bands from that era. And I'll
do the same from the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or most influential, just, we're We're
All
just
right.
gonna just name them off here. So you start.
I'm
actually,
gonna
'cause-
go with the mighty Depeche Mode. I love all eras of Depeche Mode. I love the early stuff. I think, in my opinion, my favorite stuff was the '80s music for the masses. That whole era, I really, really like. But then, when they came out, hitting pretty hard with Violator and some of that stuff later on,
Yeah.
I thought it was just as valid. And I think they did a really nice job of progressing through the years. And to this day, I really like Depeche Mode. Still listen to them.
Yeah, me too. And in fact, it was my first pick.
Well, there you go. Anything you want to add about Depeche Mode?
I just remember that music for the masses on that road trip with my friend, and just definitively '80s for me. And I remember People Are People on MTV vividly.
They wore that out.
They
that
really
video.
did. Yeah.
Still a great song, great message.
Yeah. So pulling from the electronic influences, definitely very huge.
Yeah.
So that's
your pick.
That's my pick.
Okay,
go on for it.
Well, I'll keep going. I don't think anybody's gonna argue with this one. The Cure. I mean, when the first band I think of when I think alternative music, no matter where it started or whatever, I think it starts and ends with The Cure. It's going to be a sad day when Robert Smith's no longer around. And I've seen them twice live, and they were incredible.
Yeah.
Both times that I saw them. And I really like all eras of The Cure. Their early stuff, which is really crazy, and even the Pornography album and stuff like that, it's really weird.
Yeah.
I like it. I like a lot of those records. And even all the way up through, through the 90s, I liked what they did.
Yeah.
The Cure, man. I mean, there's no denying huge influence, as influential as any band ever. I'm glad they finally made it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because it's well deserved.
Yeah. Yeah, and since I picked The Cure also, I'll just comment that I remember before my family had cable and before I had MTV, I remember a kid, he looked like a mini version of Robert Smith. Yeah. And I remember his notebook. Remember the notebooks you could just draw on the front?
Oh, yeah.
He had the MTV logo, and then he had a bunch of bands written around it, and the biggest one said The Cure.
Wow.
And I'm like, I hadn't heard of him at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm like...
And Disintegration. I mean, does it get any better than that album as a whole? I mean, I can't believe I didn't remember to say that one, but that record is phenomenal. If you're gonna start baby steps with alternative, that's a must listen.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would put that in the top 10 albums alternative of all time that you got to check out, that you should own.
Agreed.
All right. Well, I'll keep moving on. I'm going to go with, obviously, I'm picking all the big hitters here, r.e.m. I mean, any way you slice it, they're important. They're huge.
Yeah, I picked them too.
Maybe you should have went first, but hey, we're on the same page. It happens.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
it happens. But yeah, r.e.m. I just think they've stood the test of time. Put album after album, and I think they really, honestly tried to make a different record every time out. And a lot of those records, I always had my statement was I liked every other r.e.m. record.
Yeah.
Document, just incredible record.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the sound of it, the songs are great. I think Green, honestly, is an underrated album.
Oh, I do too. Yeah.
I love Green. It may be my favorite one. And I know that that's going to make a lot of the early fans mad. I got into them a little bit later. What can I say? I got into them at the Document era.
Yeah. I did too. I remember seeing that on MTV, and to this day, I have a Spotify playlist of greatest songs ever. What I think are just the best songs.
Yeah.
And the one I love is on there.
Yeah. See, I like the Finest Work song. I think that song is.
Oh, it's a great song. I love that entire album.
It kicks ass.
Yeah,
it's great.
It really does.
All right. Well, let's see if I can pick one that you didn't pick.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with the Smiths. As
I didn't expect that out of you.
Yeah. Well, I had a roommate, Kevin. Shout out to Kevin. You know Kevin.
Oh yeah, Kevin did like them a lot.
He loved them, and I tell you what, man. The more he played, the more I ate it up.
Yeah.
I really loved it. I love the darkness of it. Morrissey, I think, is a very interesting vocalist, actually.
Yeah.
And I think he's a good vocalist. I think he's very underrated, actually.
Yeah.
The more you hear him, you get used to it, the texture of his voice, and some people say it all sounds the same. I don't really think that's true. The Smiths, the early stuff, had an edge to it.
Yeah.
And but it was always moody, always really moody, and I like that about their stuff. But yeah, that's my I guess my number 4 pick, right?
Yeah,
the Smiths.
Number 4, yeah. Now, I'm kind of steering out of the influential area and just picked a couple of my absolute favorites.
Okay.
One of them would be The Church.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Reptile and Under the Milky Way.
Yeah.
And I was enough of a Church fan that when they released the next album, Gold Afternoon Fixed, I loved every song on that one as well.
Yeah.
That one had Metropolis, and there's a deep cut I love on there called Disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're just an awesome band. I love the mood they set, the sound of their records. I just can't get enough. And
my friend, and you knew him as well, Craig Krampf, world-renowned drummer who played with a lot of people, played on Under the Milky Way.
That's right. He was He was the drummer on that.
So shout out to Craig. Craig's a great guy.
What's up, Craig?
And his daughters love r.e.m. We should mention that.
That's true. Yes.
While we're here, so all right. Well, I kind of did the same thing. I'll mention a few bands that I really like. It's hard for me to pick a favorite out of this.
Sure. There's no rules here.
Yeah, I mentioned some of these. I really like the more heavier side of alternative, the more edgy stuff. I really like Mike Ness and all the Social Distortion stuff. Love the Cult. I mean, they ventured into classic rock and metal too. But the early stuff definitely had an alternative edge to it. Love them. I love the Pixies, like we mentioned before.
Yeah.
And I really like Matthew Sweet. I was a big fan of Matthew Sweet, who I think kind of bridged the gap between kind of like what Cheap Trick did. He was more like the modern Cheap Trick type guy that did the noisy stuff but still had a pop edge.
Yeah.
And the alternative people dug him in. And if you've never heard it, forget the name of the album, but it's from 1989. He has a song called "It's the Alcohol Talking." That's just a great song.
Yeah.
But Matthew Sweet, great memories. I've seen him live a couple of times.
I remember we saw him at the now defunct 328 Performance Hall. Yeah.
Yeah. So the 328 show was great.
It was. Yeah. That was a great memory. So.
Yeah.
All right, so my last pick is a bit of a curveball.
Okay.
You probably haven't heard me talk about this group a whole lot, but I remember I got a compilation EP from them, and that's what made me explore the rest of their music more. I really, really love The.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Some people who watched MTV back then might remember the one video that had Sinead O'Connor as guest vocals. It was Kingdom of Rain.
Yeah.
But they're one of those kind of punk bands that uses a lot of acoustic, a lot of melodic stuff. They even do some dancey stuff. Yeah. They're just kind of all, not really all over the place, but they definitely draw in different styles.
Now, by that description, I would think I'm hearing like Jesus Jones.
Yeah. I would say Jesus Jones probably was influenced by The.
Okay, well, there you go. And what a great record that first Jesus Jones, or the second one, was.
Doubt,
Yeah, what a great record.
That was fantastic, yeah.
Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah, I remember listening to that album beginning to end probably 100 times when it came out.
And I remember listening to it at least 50 times because I was with you all the time back then.
Yeah.
So, it was great stuff, though.
All right.
Great memories.
So, again, we welcome your comments.
Yeah.
Alternative, the world of 80s alternative and its influences is just massive. So we probably left some things out. And let us know what you think.
Yeah, and I'll say in closing, real quick.
Sure.
A lot of the bands that were the heavier alternative stuff in the 90s, heck, just about all of them would cite, heck, even Matchbox 20 did... They even played Fascination Street live on their first tour. Bands like Everclear. Art was a huge r.e.m. fan.
Yeah.
So even the heavier alternative stuff that was out in the 80s, or I guess you would just call it the modern rock, they called it at that point.
Yeah.
Most of it was heavily rooted in alternative music.
Absolutely, yes. All right, so let us know what you think.
Yes.
Thanks for watching this episode of In a Darkened Room. You can find the link to this episode's companion Spotify playlist in the description. Darren and Chris welcome your comments. You can leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. Follow In a Darkened Room on Twitter to receive updates and submit your ideas for what we should discuss in upcoming episodes. Darren and Chris are also on Instagram, so give them a follow there as well. All of these links can be found in the description below. While you're there, be sure to click subscribe and ring the bell.
All right, random topic time, and I'm craving a little trivia this time around.
All
What do
right,
you think?
we can do it. Is it my draw?
I believe it is your draw. So,
All right.
yeah, draw from this side here.
I hope I can see it. We're in a darkened room.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we got here. All right. What group canceled their U.S. tour after their drummer John Bonham drank himself? Okay.
Oh, come on now.
Let's go to another one. That's too
Let's
easy.
do another one, yeah.
Yeah, that's Led Zeppelin. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I mean, when it's that easy.
Yeah.
Come on.
May as well draw another card.
Yeah,
What's the category at the top there?
The category is the 90s.
The 90s, okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right, here we go. What country western star contributed her version of New Kid in Town on the Eagles tribute album called Common Thread? Trisha Yearwood, Kathy Mattea, Nancy Griffith, or Bailey Vikstrom? I don't even know who that is. No offense.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that album. I mean, I know that like Travis Tritt did Take It Easy. I know that much.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure of all the other tracks.
Little Texas did a song on there. Remember that?
Yeah.
Um,
It has to be one of the first two.
yeah, I'm gonna agree with that.
And
so
I'm gonna guess Trisha Yearwood because she was so big at that point.
That's gonna be my guess as well. I'm gonna say Trisha Yearwood, and the answer was Trisha Yearwood.
Awesome.
Read it and weep. There you go.
There you go.
All right,
All right.
we're geniuses. I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Sometimes
Well,
we are.
I tell you what. This game. One thing I've learned about this game. Two of the answers are so far out in left field.
Yeah.
That you can just eliminate them instantly. It's like any other multiple choice test that you take in life. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So there we go. I guess we learned something. Trisha Yearwood.
We did indeed. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Who is Miss Garth Brooks? I know that too.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Mrs.
We'll be back soon with another episode. So
Thanks
take
for
care.
watching, guys. See you. That's right. You told me that.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Damn it.